Hello, my loves. I'm Leah Stewart, writer, screenwriter, and producer here at Real Love Stories. And before we start today's story, I want to ask you a question. What if the person you secretly love loves you back too, but now it might be too late? Imagine loving someone in secret for 3 whole years, and then, believing you'll never be loved back, you make the hardest decision of your life so far. To walk away. To leave. To leave behind that person who carries your heart without even knowing, thinking they could never see you the same way. But fate has its own plans, doesn't it? On a rainy night, something completely unexpected happens. Something that changes the course of destiny forever. And suddenly, everything that was hidden is revealed. That person you were certain would never see you that way, they feel the same. They always have. They just never had the courage to reveal it. And now that the universe has forced the truth out into the open, what happens? Is there still time? Or have some secrets been kept too long? A romance about second chances you thought you'd never have. About love built in silence and perhaps lost forever. Or not. I've dedicated my last 15 days completely immersed in this, building a romance that I hope with all my heart will make you sigh as much as I sighed while writing it. If you enjoy it, leave your like and comment below what you felt listening to this story. Get your heart ready. Let's begin.
Have you ever watched someone walk away and felt, deep in your bones, that you were making the worst mistake of your life? Not in a dramatic, movie kind of way, but in that quiet, gut-wrenching certainty that sits in your chest like a stone you swallowed and can never cough up. August had that feeling. Standing on the porch of a farmhouse that smelled like wet wood and lavender, watching Hazel smile at him with her arms crossed against the evening chill. The kind of smile that said everything and nothing. The kind of smile he had memorized over 3 years without realizing he was memorizing it. He should have said something. Should have told her what her resignation had ripped open inside him. Should have grabbed her hand and admitted that he had spent the last week pretending the world made sense when it absolutely did not. But August Martin had built an entire career on saying the right thing at the right time. And tonight, when it mattered more than any boardroom negotiation, every word he knew turned to dust. So he hugged her instead. He pulled her close and held on in a way he had never held anyone. Not a polite goodbye, not a friendly pat on the back. He held her the way you hold something precious when you finally understand it has been precious all along. His arms tightened. She fit against his chest, as if that space had been carved specifically for her. And for a moment, just one fleeting, unbearable moment, she let her head rest in the curve of his neck, and he felt her breath warm against his skin. She smelled like chamomile and lavender. She always did. He kissed her forehead, slowly, letting his lips linger a second too long for it to mean nothing, and a second too short for it to mean everything he wanted it to. "See ya, Hazel. Call me if you need anything." 4 words that were supposed to be casual. They came out sounding like a prayer. Hazel stood on the porch watching him walk to his car. She didn't wave. She didn't call out. She just stood there, her fingers gripping the wooden railing, her knuckles turning white, the wind catching strands of her hair across her face. And honestly, if someone had been watching from the outside, they would have seen it. 2 people who were clearly, painfully, obviously in love. And neither one brave enough to say it out loud. August got in the car, turned the key. The engine rumbled to life. He adjusted the rearview mirror and caught one last glimpse of Hazel on that porch, the warm light from the windows framing her like a painting he would never be able to hang anywhere but inside his own chest. He pulled out of the gravel driveway. The headlights cut through the drizzle. And he drove. The rain picked up quickly. What had been a soft patter on the roof became a relentless drumming within minutes. The wipers slashed back and forth, struggling to keep up. The country road narrowed, flanked by dark trees that bent under the wind like old men whispering secrets to each other. August drove on autopilot. His body handled the steering wheel, the brakes, the curves. But his mind was still on that porch. Still feeling the warmth of Hazel against his chest, still hearing the 4 useless words he had said instead of the 3 that actually mattered. He replayed the last week in his head, her resignation letter on his desk, the way his stomach dropped, the way the office felt like a tomb every morning after she left for the day, the way he had found her notebook tucked between financial reports, and the words she had written, words she never meant for him to read, had cracked something open that he could no longer close. Feelings for someone who will never look at me that way. But he did look at her that way. He had been looking at her that way for longer than he was willing to admit. He had just buried it under schedules and contracts, and the comfortable lie that what he felt was professional admiration. The road curved. August blinked, wiped the fog from the inside of the windshield with his sleeve. He should call her tomorrow. No. He should turn the car around right now. Go back. Stand on that porch in the rain and tell her that the moment she placed that resignation letter on his desk, something inside him shattered. His phone sat in the passenger seat. He glanced at it. He could call her. Right now. Say the words. Even if they came out clumsy, even if they came out wrong. He reached for the phone. And that is when the world ended. It happened in fragments. The way a nightmare unfolds, not in one smooth motion, but in broken pieces your brain tries and fails to arrange in the right order. A shape on the road, dark, massive, standing perfectly still in the middle of the lane as if it had every right to be there. A horse. August yanked the wheel. Hard. Too hard. The tires screamed against the wet asphalt. The car lurched sideways, hydroplaning on a film of rainwater. The headlights swung wildly, painting the trees in a flash of white. Then nothing. Then white again. There was a sound. A terrible, grinding, crunching sound of metal folding in on itself. The windshield splintered into a web of cracks. Something hit his chest. The seatbelt locked and dug into his ribs like a fist. The car left the road. It rolled, once, twice. The world spun. Glass shattered. The roof caved. Rain poured in through the broken windows. And then silence. The kind of silence that only exists after violence. Heavy. Ringing. Wrong. August was hanging sideways, suspended by the seatbelt. Blood trickled down his forehead, warm and slow. His vision blurred. His ears buzzed. He tried to move his arm and felt something grind in his chest. A pain so sharp it stole his breath. The phone. Where was the phone? He could see it. On the ground beneath him, the screen cracked but still glowing. Hazel's name in the recent calls list. He tried to reach for it. His arm wouldn't cooperate. The rain fell through the shattered windshield onto his face. Cold, relentless. And in the growing darkness, as the edges of his vision closed in like curtains being drawn, August thought of one thing. One face, one voice. Hazel. Her laugh when something caught her off guard. The way she wrinkled her nose when she concentrated. The warmth of her pressed against his chest just 20 minutes ago on that porch. 20 minutes. That is all it takes for a life to split in two. 20 minutes between holding someone you love and lying broken in a ditch on a country road, wondering if you will ever see her again. The darkness swallowed him whole. Somewhere, on a farmhouse porch, Hazel Owens was still standing in the rain, still watching the empty road where his taillights had disappeared. She had a feeling, the kind you cannot explain and cannot shake, the kind that sits in your ribcage and whispers that something is terribly, horribly wrong. She pulled out her phone. She called him. It rang once, twice, 3 times. No answer. Now I know what you are thinking. You are thinking this is just another love story. A man and a woman. An almost confession. A dramatic accident. You have heard it before. But this story is not what you think it is. Because to understand what brought August Martin to that dark road, why Hazel Owens was standing on that porch with a heart full of words she never said, and what happens after the worst night of their lives, we need to go back. A few days before everything fell apart. Back to a Tuesday night, when Hazel walked into August's office with a cup of coffee and a secret she had been carrying for 3 years. Have you ever spent an entire night in an empty office with someone you silently love, knowing it would be the last time? Hazel had. It was 10:40 on a Tuesday night, and the 23rd floor of Martin and Associates was a ghost town. Every office was dark except one. His. Hazel stood in the doorway, holding a mug of coffee she had no business making at this hour. But the old machine in the break room had become a kind of ritual over 3 years, and rituals are hard to break even when you know you should. Extra hot, no cream, 2 spoonfuls of sugar. A pinch of cinnamon, because she had noticed once, during a late September evening in their first year, that he stirred cinnamon into his coffee when he thought no one was watching. She had never told him she noticed. She just started doing it for him. And he never questioned why his coffee tasted different when she made it. He simply drank it. Every time. August sat behind his desk, the blue glow of the monitor painting shadows across his face. He looked tired in a way that had nothing to do with the hour. It was the kind of exhaustion that settles into the bones, the kind that a full night of sleep cannot touch, because it comes from somewhere deeper than the body. He did not notice her walk in. She studied him for a moment, the tight line of his jaw, the way his index finger tapped a restless, uneven rhythm against the edge of the desk, as if his thoughts were running too fast for the rest of him to keep up. The slight furrow between his brows that appeared whenever he carried something heavy in his mind and refused to set it down. 3 years. She had been watching this man for 3 years, learning him the way you learn a language you will never speak out loud. Hazel set the mug on the corner of his desk. The quiet clink of ceramic against glass broke whatever trance he was in. "Thanks," he murmured. Automatic. But then something shifted. His hand reached for the mug and paused. His eyes traveled from the coffee to her face, and he actually saw her. Not glanced, not acknowledged. Saw. The way you see someone when the walls come down for just a second and you forget to pretend you are fine. "You're still here." His voice was quieter than usual, stripped of the precision he carried into boardrooms. It was almost a whisper, almost relief. Hazel leaned against the doorframe. "I'm always here, August." The words left her mouth before she could catch them, and the worst part was that they were true. Painfully, embarrassingly, completely true. 3 years of being his shadow. 3 years of knowing his schedule better than he did, of reminding him about his niece Clara's birthday in Germany every March, because he would forget it every single year. Hazel had chosen the gift. Wrapped it in blue paper because Clara loved blue, written a card in her own handwriting, something warm and personal, and left a blank line at the bottom for August to sign his name. He always signed it without reading what she had written. He never asked what the card said. He trusted her with that, the way he trusted her with everything, and somehow that trust was both the best and the most devastating thing about her life. August picked up the mug. He took a long sip, closed his eyes for a second. "Sit," he said. Not an order, an invitation. The kind that comes out soft when someone is too tired to perform. Hazel sat in the chair across from his desk. The leather was cold through the fabric of her skirt. They talked. Not about quarterly projections or client acquisitions or the restructuring deal that had consumed his last 3 weeks. They talked the way people talk at 11 at night when the masks have slipped and there is no audience left to perform for. August told her he was tired, not the kind of tired that sleep fixes, the kind of tired that comes from building something enormous and wondering, in the quiet hours, if any of it actually matters. "Sometimes I feel like I'm building a sand castle," he said, turning his coffee mug slowly between his palms. "You can spend hours shaping it, getting every detail right, and it might even look beautiful for a while, but all it takes is one wave, one careless, ordinary wave, and the whole thing is just sand again." Hazel watched his hands around the mug. Strong hands, steady hands, hands that signed contracts and shook hands with senators, and never, not once, trembled in a meeting. But tonight, under the blue light, they looked different. They looked like the hands of a man who was holding on to something slippery and running out of grip. She wanted to reach across the desk and cover his hands with hers. She wanted to tell him that the sandcastle was not the point, that the hours he spent building it, the care he poured into every detail, the fact that he tried at all, that was the point. That was what mattered. But she did not say any of that, because saying it would mean crossing a line she had drawn around herself 3 years ago. A line that kept her sane, a line that kept her employed, a line that kept her heart in one piece, even if only barely. So she just listened. The way she always listened. Fully. Quietly. With every part of herself turned toward him like a compass needle that could not help pointing north. And at this hour, without the armor, without the title, without the office full of people waiting for instructions, August spoke differently. His sentences loosened. His voice dropped half a register. He became the man beneath the CEO, the man she had met in a job interview 3 years ago, who had looked at her resume for exactly 4 seconds before asking, "Can you start Monday?" She had started Monday, and somewhere between that Monday and this Tuesday night, without either of them meaning for it to happen, he had stolen every single piece of her heart. Quietly, gradually. The way dawn steals the darkness, not all at once, but so gently you do not notice until the whole sky has changed. "I don't know what I'd do without you, Hazel." He said it simply, like stating a fact, like saying the sky is blue. "You're the only constant I have. Everything else shifts. People leave, deals fall through. But you're always here." Her throat tightened. A sharp, sudden ache that climbed from her chest to her jaw, because tomorrow she was going to destroy that constant, and she could not tell him why. She could not say that staying in this office, 3 feet from him, smelling his cologne in the elevator, feeling the accidental brush of his hand when he passed her a document, hearing him say her name in that low, certain way he had, was slowly and methodically breaking her apart from the inside. She could not say that she was in love with him, that she had been in love with him for longer than she could pinpoint, that every late night she stayed was not dedication or loyalty, but simply the inability to leave a room he was still in. "August," she began. The word came out heavier than she intended. He looked at her, waiting. She could say it now, right now. In this empty office, with the city glittering 23 floors below and the silence wrapping around them like something warm and dangerous, she could open her mouth and let the truth fall out, and let the pieces land wherever they would. But the words died somewhere between her heart and her tongue. She stood up. "I need to talk to you tomorrow. Something important." He nodded, slowly, without breaking eye contact. And there was something in that look, something searching, something that said he could feel the weight of what she was not saying, even if he could not see its shape. Hazel turned toward the door. Her heels were quiet on the carpet. Each step felt heavier than the last. She was almost through the doorway when his voice reached her. "Hazel." She stopped. Her hand rested on the doorframe. She did not turn around. She could not. Because if she turned around and saw his face one more time tonight, she would either tell him everything or never leave at all. "Thank you for always staying here with me, even when I don't deserve it." Something cracked inside her chest. Not loudly, not dramatically. Just a quiet fracture, like a thin sheet of ice giving way under the weight of something it was never meant to hold. Because he did not know. He had absolutely no idea. He did not know that when he placed his hand on the small of her back to guide her into a meeting room, her breath would catch and she would count the seconds his palm stayed there. He did not know that when he leaned over her shoulder to look at something on her screen, close enough for her to feel the warmth of his chest near her shoulder, she would close her eyes for half a second and memorize the scent of him. Cedar. Something warm and clean. A scent that had become, without her permission, the smell of safety and heartbreak at the same time. He did not know that she was in love with a man who saw her as his assistant. his right hand, his constant. Everything except what she actually was. Hazel managed to smile, a small one, aimed at the empty hallway ahead of her, because she could not aim it at him. "You're welcome, August." She walked out, down the hallway, past the dark offices, into the elevator. She pressed the lobby button and watched the doors close, and in the polished metal surface, she caught her own reflection, distorted and strange, a woman she almost did not recognize. Her eyes were dry. She would not cry, not here, not yet. But tonight, walking through the empty lobby and out into the cool night air, Hazel Owens made herself a quiet promise. This was the last time she would stay late for August Martin. This time, she was the one who was not going to stay. It was Wednesday, 9:30 in the morning, and August was on the phone, arguing about tax deductions with his lawyer, when Hazel walked into his office. He lifted a finger, that universal gesture for just a minute, without really looking at her. It was the biggest mistake of his life, because sometimes the moments that change everything begin with the smallest of gestures, and sometimes, by the time you realize you've made a mistake, it's already too late to fix it. Hazel stood in front of his desk, waiting. 30 seconds. A minute. 2. August kept talking about percentages, legal loopholes, the kind of conversation that sounds important but deep down isn't. He used that controlled, precise tone that frightened lawyers and intimidated executives. But he had never used that tone with Hazel. He never had to. Only today, he didn't even notice he was doing it, because he wasn't really paying attention to her. "August," her voice cut through his conversation. It was firm, but there was something else underneath, something fragile. He held up his finger again, waited a moment longer. The lawyer was explaining something about regulations, and then Hazel spoke. 4 words that stopped the world. "August, I am resigning." The silence that followed wasn't gradual. It was instantaneous, like diving into a cold pool and the water instantly plugging your ears. On the other end of the line, the lawyer was still talking. August could hear the sound, could see the man's lips moving in his memory from their last meeting. But he didn't process a single word, just distant, muffled noise. He looked at Hazel. She was standing there, a crisp white letter in her hands. Company letterhead. The kind of document you recognize without even reading it. "Mr. Martin, are you still there?" August hung up the phone. He didn't say he'd call back. He just hung up. The room changed size. First, it became too small, the walls closing in. Then it became too large, a vast, empty space between him and Hazel that had never existed before. "You're... what?" Hazel stepped forward. She placed the letter on the glass desk. The sound of the paper against the smooth surface was too loud in the silence. A letter of resignation. He saw the heading. Her name written in that delicate, cursive script. The signature at the bottom. All of it official. All of it real. "That's what I was trying to tell you last night," she said, her voice dropping. It was too gentle. The kind of tone you'd use to tell a kid their dog isn't coming home. "I'll stay through Friday, just long enough to wrap things up and show someone from admin the ropes. After that, I'm headed back to my grandparents' farm." Farm. August repeated the word. It sounded foreign, as if she had spoken in another language. "It's an hour from here, in the countryside. My grandparents are getting older, they need help with the property, and I..." She paused, took a breath. "I need a change." Have you ever stood face to face with someone and realized there was an abyss of unsaid things between you? August felt it now. He knew there was more, so much more, but he didn't know what, and he was afraid to ask. He tried to argue, tried to find the logic, because August Martin always found the logic. "Is it the salary? I'll raise it. How much do you want?" Hazel shook her head. "The workload? I'll hire someone else to help you. You don't have to do everything yourself." She shook her head again. Did someone disrespect you? Did someone treat you poorly? Tell me who. I'll handle it. It's none of that, August. Then why? His voice came out louder than he intended. Almost a shout, almost desperation. Hazel looked at him, and there was something in her gaze he couldn't decipher. Sadness, resignation, and something else. Something that looked like pain. Because I have to. Her voice was just a whisper now. That's all. I have to. I hope you can understand. He lowered his head, then looked up toward the window, nodding to her without meeting her eyes. And for the first time in a 15-year career of building corporate empires, August Martin didn't have a plan. He didn't have a strategy. He had absolutely nothing, just panic. When Hazel left the room, her footsteps as silent as they had always been, August picked up the letter. He, who signed multi-million-dollar contracts without blinking, was shaken by a single piece of paper. 3 years. They had worked together for 3 years. He knew the coffee she liked, knew that she wrinkled her nose when she was concentrating, that she scratched her head when she was nervous. He knew she wore a soft, floral perfume that lingered in the air after she left the room. And August realized, too late, always too late, that this was the first time in 3 years he had allowed himself to think about Hazel Owens outside the context of work. The first time he had asked himself what she actually meant to him, and the answer terrified him, because he realized that, for a long time now, it hadn't been just about work anymore. Thursday, 11 at night. August was alone in the office for the 3rd night in a row. Hazel's desk was covered in papers, proposals arranged in perfect stacks, each one marked with handwritten post-its explaining deadlines, contacts, and levels of urgency. Hazel's cursive handwriting was on every single one of them. It was as if she were preparing the world to keep spinning without her. He hated every inch of it. August was trying to review a contract when he saw it. In the middle of a pile of financial reports, something that didn't belong, a small notebook, its brown leather cover worn at the corners. No label, no name. He knew he shouldn't open it. He opened it anyway. The first page, grocery lists, milk, bread, coffee. The second page, reminders. Call the dentist, change kitchen light bulb. Nothing significant, just an ordinary notebook. August started to close it, but then something fell from within, a folded yellow sticky note. He opened it. The handwriting was the same, that delicate cursive he knew by heart, but different, rushed, almost angry. I'm an idiot, a complete idiot. How did I let this happen? How did I let this grow inside me, knowing it leads nowhere? I have to stop. I have to, but I can't. August frowned. He flipped through a few more pages of the notebook. Nothing, just lists, until he found another folded paper tucked between the pages. This one was creased at the edges, as if it had been folded and unfolded many times. Anger. That's what I feel. Anger at myself for confusing things. Anger for letting myself develop feelings for someone who will never look at me that way. He's kind to me, and I turned kindness into hope. What kind of pathetic person does that? August's chest tightened. He searched for more. His hands trembled as he turned the pages, and he found it. Another paper, this one written in blue ink. The handwriting was slanted. I've decided. I'm leaving. It's the only solution, because if I stay, I'll end up humiliating myself. I'll end up letting something slip, a look, a word, anything, and he'll notice. And then everything will get awkward. He'll pity me. Or worse, he'll pretend he didn't notice and treat me with that polite courtesy you use for embarrassing people. I can't stand the thought of that. I'd rather leave with my dignity. August let the paper fall from his hand. He reread it. Slowly. Feelings for someone who will never look at me that way. She was talking about him. It had to be him. 3 years working together. 3 years of coffee brought without asking. Of smiles that seemed meant only for him. Of staying late because he stayed late. He had thought it was friendship. or professional loyalty. But it was something else. And him? What had he felt in those 3 years? August leaned back in his chair. He closed his eyes. That strange feeling when he arrived at the office and Hazel was already there. Relief. As if the day only truly began when she appeared. That irrational irritation when a client flirted with her in meetings. Jealousy disguised as protectiveness. That deep loneliness on Friday nights when she went home and he was left staring at her empty chair. What had he called it? Professional dependence? Habit? Lies? Comfortable lies, he had told himself, because admitting the truth meant risking everything. August opened his eyes. He picked up his phone. He typed, "Hazel, can we talk tomorrow? It's important." He stared at the message. His finger hovered over the send button. But he didn't send it, because what would he say? That he had invaded her privacy? That he had read things she never wanted him to know? That he might, just might, feel the same, but never had the courage to admit it? August deleted the message. He put the papers back in the notebook, closed it, placed it in a drawer, locked it with a key. But he knew there was no point in locking it away. The words were already engraved somewhere inside him that he couldn't reach. August glanced at the clock. 12:15. Tomorrow was Friday, Hazel's last day at the company, and he still didn't know what to do. Because August Martin had built an empire by solving complex problems. But this problem had no logical solution. This problem required something he had never known how to do. To be honest, with her. And with himself, he had 24 hours. And for the first time in his life, August Smith Martin was afraid that 24 hours wouldn't be enough. Friday. Hazel Owens' last day at Martin & Associates. Her colleagues threw a small farewell party at the end of the workday. A grocery store cake, lukewarm soda, a card everyone had signed. August didn't sign it. Not because he didn't want to, but because he didn't know what to write. Good luck? A lie. He didn't want her to have luck away from him. We'll miss you? Insufficient. He would miss her. Not we. Thank you for everything? Too little. How do you thank someone for being your second brain? So he wrote nothing. And now he stood in the corner of the makeshift party in the conference room, watching Hazel smile at everyone. That polite smile, not her real one. 6 o'clock. Everyone started to leave. Waving, wishing her well, asking her to visit. Soon, it was just Hazel and August. She was gathering the last of her things from her desk, a mug, a small plant, a picture frame with a photo of her grandparents. Outside, the sky had turned a leaden gray. Thunder rumbled in the distance. Hazel. She stopped. It's starting to rain hard. Let me give you a ride home. I'm not going home. I'm going straight to my grandparents' farm, she said. All right, I'll take you there. You don't have to, August. I'll take a taxi. She closed the box with her belongings. To the farm? A 1-hour taxi ride will cost a fortune. She gave a tired little smile. It's fine. I'll manage. But August had already grabbed his car keys. I'm taking you. Have you ever seen stubbornness and desperation dress up as kindness? That's what August was doing. And Hazel knew it. The drive was an hour. Torrential rain beat against the windshield, the wipers working too fast to keep up. They talked. About small things at first, the traffic, the rain, the bumpy road. But then August asked about the farm. And Hazel talked about her grandparents, how Grandpa Henrique still tried to fix the tractor himself even at 83. How Grandma Madalena made the best pecan pie in town, but sometimes forgot to turn off the stove. She spoke with affection, with longing, and August realized she was going home, to a place where she was loved, where people noticed when she was sad. He had never asked if she was sad. When they arrived at the farm, the rain had eased. The house was simple, and then, on the porch, as the rain started to fall again, slow and soft, August did something that surprised even himself. He hugged Hazel. It wasn't a colleague's hug. It wasn't a formal hug. It was the hug of someone saying goodbye to something essential. He kissed her forehead, slowly, like a promise, or a farewell. "See you, Hazel. Call me if you need anything." She stood on the porch, watching his car disappear into the rain, her heart aching. But somehow she felt this wasn't a final goodbye. Which was funny, because fate has its own way of putting things in their proper place, even if it's painful. August drove in silence. And then, headlights, a horse on the road, a sudden screeching halt. The world turned sideways, the sound of shattering glass, the crunch of bending metal. Darkness. August only had time to think of one face before he blacked out completely. Hazel. 2:15 in the morning. Hazel's phone rang in the dark. She woke up confused, her heart already pounding before she even answered. Unknown number. "Hello? Miss Owens? This is St. Aurora Hospital. You are listed as the emergency contact for Mr. August Smith Martin." Her heart froze instantly. You know that feeling when you take a hard blow, and suddenly it feels like your ears are clogged as if you're underwater and the floor disappears from beneath your feet? That was what Hazel felt. Hazel arrived at the hospital still in her pajamas, a coat thrown over them. Grandma Madalena had driven. Hazel was shaking too much to hold the steering wheel. The emergency room, the smell of antiseptic and fear. Dr. Alvarenga came in 12 minutes later. She counted every one of them. He was direct. Not unkind, but direct in the way surgeons learn to be when there is no gentle version of what needs to be said. A severe car accident. His vehicle had swerved to avoid a horse on the road, lost traction on the wet asphalt, and rolled off the shoulder into a drainage ditch. A passing truck driver had found the wreckage 40 minutes later and called emergency services. August had been unconscious when the paramedics arrived. Blunt force trauma to the head. 4 fractured ribs on the left side. They had taken him into surgery immediately. The bleeding was controlled. His skull showed no fractures, but the impact had caused a diffuse axonal injury, a type of brain trauma where the sudden deceleration damages nerve fibers deep inside the brain. Not the kind you can see on a scan right away, the kind that reveals itself slowly in the hours and days that follow. "We have placed him in a medically induced coma," Dr. Alvarenga explained. He spoke carefully, choosing each word the way a man handles something fragile. "This is not a sign that he is worse. It is a measure to protect his brain. The swelling needs time to decrease. The induced coma reduces the brain's metabolic demand, gives it space to heal without the stress of consciousness." Hazel heard the words. She understood them individually. But together, arranged in that order, they formed a sentence her mind refused to fully absorb. "How long?" she asked. Her voice sounded like it belonged to someone else, someone far away. "We will reassess every 48 hours. If the swelling responds well, we may begin reducing sedation within a week, possibly 10 days. But I want to be honest with you, Miss Owens. Every brain responds differently. There are no guarantees about when or if he will wake on his own once we withdraw the medication." There it was, that word, if. "Can I see him?" They let her in. Nothing prepares you for seeing someone you love in a hospital bed. You can imagine it. You can brace yourself. But when you walk through that door and see them lying there, pale and still and connected to machines that breathe for them and measure their heartbeat and drip fluids into their veins, something inside you rearranges permanently. A part of you that was whole becomes something else, something cracked, something that will never sit quite the same way again, even after it heals. August was barely recognizable. His face was swollen on the left side, a deep bruise stretching from his temple to his jaw. A tube ran from his mouth to the ventilator beside the bed. His chest rose and fell in a rhythm that was too even, too mechanical, because it was not his rhythm. It was the machines. The heart monitor beeped. Steady, persistent, the most important sound in the world. Hazel pulled a chair to the side of his bed. She sat down. She took his hand, careful not to disturb the IV line taped to the back of it. His fingers were warm. That surprised her. She had expected cold. She had expected something that felt like absence. But his hand was warm and his skin was soft, and if she closed her eyes, she could almost pretend they were sitting in his office at 11 at night, not talking, just existing in the same space, the way they had done 100 times before. She did not leave. The first week was the hardest. Hazel came every morning and stayed until the nurses gently told her visiting hours were over. She learned the rhythms of the ICU the way you learn the rhythms of a house you did not choose to live in, but cannot leave. The shift changes at 7 and 7, the quiet hum of the ventilator, the soft alarm that sounded whenever his blood pressure dipped, sending her heart into her throat until a nurse came and adjusted something, and the alarm stopped and the world resumed. She talked to him. The doctors said there was no evidence that patients in induced comas could hear, but they also said there was no evidence they could not. So Hazel talked. She told him small, silly things. That she missed arguing with him about the thermostat in his office. That she missed the sound of his footsteps in the hallway, that particular rhythm she could identify from 3 rooms away. That she missed him at breakfast, which was absurd because they had never once shared a breakfast. On the 4th day, she leaned close enough to smell the antiseptic on his skin and, underneath it, faintly, almost imperceptibly, the ghost of cedar. "You need to wake up, August," she whispered, "because I have something to tell you, and I need you to be awake to hear it, so do not take too long." On day 8, Dr. Alvarenga began reducing the sedation. Slowly, carefully, lowering the dosage in increments so small they were almost symbolic. The brain scans showed improvement. The swelling had decreased, the pressure was stabilizing, but August did not wake up. Not on day 8, not on day 9, not on day 10. The doctors explained that this was normal, that the transition from induced coma to natural consciousness is not a switch you flip. It is a gradual surfacing, like a diver rising slowly from deep water. The brain needs to find its own way back. Some patients take days, some take longer. Hazel waited. She read to him. She had brought a novel from her grandmother's shelf, a worn paperback with a cracked spine and coffee stains on the cover. She read chapter after chapter in a low, steady voice, not because she thought the story mattered, but because she needed him to hear something human among all the mechanical sounds, something warm, something that reminded them both that the world outside this room still existed. On day 12, his fingers moved. Not a squeeze, not a conscious gesture, just a twitch, a tiny, involuntary contraction that the nurse said could be a reflex. But Hazel felt it. She felt it in his hand that she had been holding for 12 days, and she chose to believe it was more than a reflex. On day 15, Hazel was dozing in the chair. The book had fallen from her lap, open and face down on the floor. Her hand was wrapped around his, the way it always was. Her fingers laced through his in a pattern that had become as natural as breathing. And then she felt it. Not a twitch this time, a squeeze. Deliberate, weak, but deliberate. His fingers curled around hers with a pressure that was unmistakably intentional. Her eyes flew open. "August?" His eyelids flickered. Not open, not yet, but moving, struggling against a weight that had held them shut for over 2 weeks. She leaned forward. Her free hand found his face. She touched his cheek, gently, the way you touch something you have been terrified of losing. "August, I am here. Can you hear me?" A sound came from his throat. Low, raw, the sound of a voice that has not been used in 15 days trying to remember how to work. And then his eyes opened, not all at once, in slow, painful increments, blinking against the light, unfocused, searching. His pupils were dilated and confused, scanning the ceiling, the walls, the machines, none of it making sense, until they found her. And the first word that came from his mouth, hoarse and fractured, and barely louder than a breath, was her name. Hazel! The heart monitor spiked. An alarm triggered. Within seconds, the room was full. Nurses. The on-call physician. Dr. Alvarenga, who had been down the hall reviewing charts and came through the door still holding his pen. Hazel was guided out of the room, gently but firmly. She stood on the other side of the glass partition, her hand still warm from holding his, and watched the medical team work. Checking his pupils, testing his responses, asking him questions she could not hear through the glass. 20 minutes, the longest 20 minutes of her life, and she had recently become an expert on long minutes. Dr. Alvarenga came out. He was not smiling, but his face had lost that careful blankness doctors wear when they are managing expectations. He is awake. He is responsive. He recognized you, which is an excellent sign for cognitive function. Hazel exhaled, a breath she had been holding for 15 days. But there was always a but. But he will need constant care for the next few months. Dr. Alvarenga, chief surgeon, mid-50s, with the weary eyes of a man who had seen too much, explained as he flipped through August's chart. Moderate head trauma. No severe neurological damage. But there were after effects. Difficulty with balance, extreme fatigue, short-term memory lapses, sensitivity to light, physical therapy, neurological follow-ups, relearning simple tasks. How long? Hazel asked. 3 to 6 months of intensive recovery, maybe more. Dr. Alvarenga said he had already contacted August's family. His parents were on a cruise along the Amalfi Coast. They would try to return, but it could take a week. His grandparents lived in Spain. His niece Clara and his sister lived in Germany. And then there was his uncle, Roderick Martin. He had shown up once, spent 15 minutes in the room, signed papers to temporarily take over the company, and informed them that he would arrange for a private nurse and a specialized care facility. A care facility. Hazel felt something cold slide down her spine. A care facility? She repeated. It's common in cases like this, the doctor explained. Patients who don't have family nearby often stay in specialized institutions during their recovery. Institution. A cold word. Clinical. Professional. Hazel imagined August, who hated hospitals, who complained about even a routine checkup, trapped in a white bed, surrounded by strangers, with no one who truly cared. Have you ever made a decision that you know is crazy, but it's the only right thing to do? Hazel made that decision in 3 seconds. He's not going to any care facility. The doctor blinked. Miss Owens, I'll take care of him, at my grandparents' farm. Silence. Doctor. Alvarenga took off his glasses, rubbing his tired face. Do you understand that this is intensive care? Medication on a strict schedule, daily physical therapy. He can't exert himself, he can't be left alone. I know. Do you have any medical training? No, but I can learn. And my grandmother was a nurse for 30 years before she retired. The doctor studied her, searching for what? Insanity? Devotion? Maybe they were the same thing. I'll need the patient to agree, Dr. Alvarenga said finally. And I'll need to evaluate the property to ensure it has the minimum necessary structure. But if you're truly willing, I am. August arrived at the farm on a Saturday afternoon. A private ambulance, a stretcher, a portable oxygen tank. Grandpa Henrique helped unload him. Grandma Madalena had already prepared the downstairs room. August hated all of it. He did not say so. He did not have to. Hazel saw it in the way his jaw tightened when the paramedics lifted him from the stretcher to the bed, his body rigid with the effort of not wincing. She saw it in the way he turned his face toward the wall when she leaned over to adjust his pillow, as if the simple act of having his pillow adjusted by someone else was a humiliation he could not bear to witness himself receiving. This was a man who had commanded rooms full of executives without raising his voice. A man who signed decisions that moved markets and never second-guessed them. And now he could not sit up without the room tilting sideways. He hated being weak. And Hazel understood that. She understood it the way you understand a language you do not speak but have listened to long enough to recognize the meaning behind the sounds. So she did not hover. She did not fuss. She gave him space the way you give a wounded animal space, not out of indifference, but because sometimes the kindest thing you can do for someone in pain is to let them feel it without an audience. The first days were disorienting for both of them. August slept 14, sometimes 16 hours a day. The medication pulled him under like a current he could not fight. When he surfaced, he was foggy. He would ask about meetings that had happened weeks ago. He would try to reach for his phone before remembering it had been shattered in the accident. Once, at 3 a.m, Hazel heard a thud and rushed in to find him on the floor beside the bed, one hand gripping the railing, his face white with pain and fury. "I was trying to get water," he said through clenched teeth, as if needing a glass of water and being unable to fetch it himself was the greatest indignity a person could suffer. Hazel helped him back into bed without saying a word. She brought him the water. She did not ask if he was okay, because the answer was obvious, and asking would only make it worse. She learned the routine: medicine at 8, noon, and 8 at night. The physical therapist came on Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays. Light meals, no screens for more than 15 minutes. And slowly, in increments so small they were almost invisible, August began to come back. By the 3rd week, he could sit up in bed without the room spinning. It was a small victory, the kind that would mean nothing to anyone who had not watched him struggle for it. But Hazel had watched, and she knew what it cost him. She brought him breakfast on a wooden tray that morning. Bread that Grandma Madalena had baked at dawn, still warm. Weak coffee, because strong coffee was not allowed yet. Orange juice in a glass with a small chip on the rim that Hazel had never gotten around to replacing. August looked at the tray, then at her. "You don't have to do this." He said it quietly, not as a complaint, as something closer to a confession. As if accepting her care was a debt he did not know how to carry. "I know." Hazel placed the tray on the small table beside the bed. "But Grandma made that bread at 5 a.m. specifically because she heard you liked it yesterday. If I don't bring it, she will march in here herself, and she will bring soup too, and she will sit in that chair and watch you eat every bite. So really, I am doing you a favor." The corner of his mouth twitched, not quite a smile, but the closest thing to one she had seen in weeks. They ate together, in silence. But it was a different kind of silence than the ones they had shared in the office, where the quiet spaces between them were always filled with the noise of work, the hum of obligation, the unspoken understanding that their proximity had a professional purpose, and therefore a professional boundary. Here there was none of that. No desk between them, no schedule to follow, no reason to be in the same room except the choice to be. Just bread, coffee, morning light through a window that looked out onto a pasture where 2 horses grazed near the fence. It was strange. It was unfamiliar. And underneath the strangeness, it was something Hazel did not allow herself to name. "Hazel." She looked up from her coffee. "Why are you still here?" The question landed softly, but she could hear what was underneath it. The thing August could not bring himself to say directly, because directness about his own feelings was a skill he had never developed. "What do you mean? You left the company. You came back to this farm to start over. You had a plan. A life." He paused. His eyes dropped to his own hand resting on the blanket. It trembled faintly, a tremor he could not always control. "And then I show up, broken, needing things I have no right to need from you. And suddenly your fresh start turns into this." He gestured vaguely at the room, the hospital bed, the oxygen tank in the corner, the pill organizer on the nightstand. You did not ruin anything, August. I did. He said it with the flat certainty of a man stating a fact he has already accepted. You should be living your life, not managing my medication schedule and helping me to the bathroom. Hazel set her cup down on the tray. The small sound of ceramic against wood filled the room like a punctuation mark. She could reassure him. She could say something kind and deflecting and move on. That would be the safe thing. The Hazel from the office thing. Smile, redirect, keep the boundary intact. But she was not in the office anymore, and the boundary she had drawn around herself for 3 years had been erased the night her phone rang at 2 a.m, and a stranger told her August was in surgery. "Do you want me to leave?" she asked. Not a challenge, a real question. She needed to know. No. The word came out before he could shape it. Too fast. Too raw. He caught himself and looked away, his jaw working, as if the honesty of his own response had embarrassed him. "No, I do not understand why you stayed. You had every reason to walk away. You resigned. You said goodbye. And then this happened, and instead of letting someone else deal with it, you brought me here. Into your home. Into your family. I have been trying to find the logic in that for 3 weeks. And I cannot." Hazel was quiet for a moment. She looked at the window, at the horses outside, at the way the morning light turned the grass into something that almost glowed. "There is no logic in it," she said finally. "That is what you cannot find, because it is not a logical thing." She turned back to him. "When I got that phone call, August, I thought you were dead. For about 40 seconds, between the moment the woman said, 'There has been an accident,' and the moment she said, 'He is in surgery,' I believed you were gone. And in those 40 seconds, every single thing I had been telling myself for 3 years, every reason I had built for leaving, every wall I put up to protect myself from what I felt, all of it disappeared, just like that, like it had never existed." Her voice did not waver, but her hands, resting on her knees, pressed hard enough that her knuckles whitened. "I realized that I could put 1,000 miles between us, and it would not matter. I could change my job, my city, my entire life. And the first time someone told me you were hurt, I would drop everything and come running. Because that is what you do when you care about someone in a way that does not follow rules or logic or self-preservation." She paused. "So no, there is no rational explanation for why I am here. I am here because the alternative was not being here, and I could not live with that." The room was very still. August looked at her, and there was something in his expression she had never seen before. Not in 3 years of reading his face across conference tables and late-night offices. It was not gratitude. It was not surprise. It was the look of a man who has just been handed something he did not believe he deserved, and does not know whether to hold it tightly or set it down before he breaks it. "Hazel, you do not have to say anything." She stood up, gathering the tray. Her movements were steady, practiced, the movements of a woman who had learned long ago how to hold herself together by keeping her hands busy. "I did not say it because I expected something back. I said it because you asked. And I am tired of answering that question with anything other than the truth." She was almost at the door when his voice stopped her. "Hazel." She paused, her back to him, her fingers tight around the edges of the tray. "Thank you." A pause. "Not for the breakfast, not for the medicine or the bed or any of that." His voice was rough, stripped. "For not letting me wake up alone." Hazel did not turn around. Because if she turned around, he would see that her eyes were wet, and then he would feel guilty for making her cry, and guilt was the last thing she wanted him to carry on top of everything else. "You are welcome, August," she said quietly, and she walked out, down the hallway, into the kitchen. She set the tray on the counter and stood there for a moment, both hands flat against the cool tile, breathing. In the other room, August lay still, staring at the ceiling where the morning light drew patterns through the window. And for the first time in weeks, the ache in his chest had nothing to do with fractured ribs. The 5th week at the farm, 10 o'clock at night. Hazel knocked on the door to August's room, the box of medical supplies in her hands. She had done this every night for weeks, changing the bandages on his fractured ribs, cleaning the bruises that hadn't completely faded, reapplying the anti-inflammatory ointment. It was a clinical procedure, professional. She had turned it into a mechanical routine because it was the only way to not think about what she was really doing, touching August Martin in ways she had never imagined she would. "Come in," his voice came from inside. Hazel pushed the door open. August was sitting on the edge of the bed, already shirtless, waiting. As he always waited. The lamplight cast shadows across his ribs, still purple in some places, yellowish in others. 5 weeks. 5 weeks since the accident. And every night, it was this same uncomfortable, necessary dance. "How are you feeling?" she asked. Her voice was professional, nurse mode activated. "Better." He gave that half smile. "The physical therapist said I'm making surprising progress." "Stubbornness," Hazel murmured, opening the box. "You've always been stubborn." She did not look at him when she said it. She could not, because somewhere in the last 2 weeks, August had started looking at her differently. Not the way he used to look at her in the office, that distracted, appreciative but unaware glance of a man who relies on someone without examining why. This was something else, something deliberate, as if a door inside him had opened and he was standing in the threshold, deciding whether to step through. Hazel knelt in front of him. It was the easiest angle to reach the lower bandage. She had knelt in this exact position dozens of times. It meant nothing. It meant everything. "Lift your arms." Slowly. He obeyed. A careful, measured motion. His jaw tightened at the stretch, but he did not make a sound. Her fingers found the edge of the bandage at his waist. She began to unwrap it, layer by layer, the white gauze loosening. His skin appearing beneath, warm and alive under her fingertips. She had done this so many times that her hands could do it without thinking. Which was the problem? Because when her hands worked on autopilot, her mind wandered. And tonight, her mind was wandering to dangerous places. The bandage came free. She set it aside. His skin looked good. The bruising was almost gone. The incision was healing clean. "Does this hurt?" She pressed gently along the rib line, feeling for any swelling or tenderness. "No." His voice had dropped. Just slightly, just enough for her to notice. "Not anymore." Hazel reached for the saline. She soaked a cotton pad and began to clean the area around the incision. Small, careful circles. A practiced motion. But her hand was trembling. A fine, barely visible tremor that she tried to control by pressing harder against his skin, which only made her more aware of his skin, which only made the trembling worse. She hoped he would not notice. He noticed. "Hazel." She kept cleaning, focused on the cotton, on the saline, on the small, circular motions that were the only thing standing between her and complete disintegration. "Hazel, stop for a moment." She stopped. The cotton pad hovered an inch from his skin. "Look at me." She did not want to look at him. Looking at him at this distance, in this light, with his skin warm under her fingers and his voice that low, was the single most dangerous thing she could do. She looked. His eyes were waiting for hers, and the expression in them was something she had never seen in 3 years of studying his face across desks and conference tables and late-night offices. It was not the controlled, measured gaze of a CEO calculating his next move. It was open, unguarded. The expression of a man who had decided to stop protecting himself and had not yet figured out what comes after. "I need to tell you something," he said, "and I need you to let me say it before you react." Her heart was hammering so hard she was certain he could hear it. "That night, your last week at the company, I was alone in the office and I found a notebook on your desk. Brown leather. Worn at the corners. The blood drained from her face. No. There were papers folded inside. Things you had written. The cotton pad fell from her fingers. It landed on the floor between them. Neither of them moved to pick it up. You read them. It was not a question. Her voice sounded hollow, distant, as if it were coming from the bottom of a well. I read them. He held her gaze. He did not look away. He did not soften it or apologize or try to ease the blow. He simply held steady, as if he owed her that much. And I have been carrying what I read ever since, pretending I had not seen it, pretending I did not know. But I cannot do that anymore. Not after everything. Not after being here with you for 5 weeks, watching you take care of me while I sat on a secret that belongs to both of us. Hazel's instinct was to stand, to leave the room, to put distance between herself and the most exposed she had ever felt in her life. But her body would not cooperate. Her knees stayed on the floor. Her hands stayed in her lap. As if some part of her, deeper than pride, deeper than fear, understood that running from this moment would be the last lie she would ever be able to live with. You wrote that you were angry at yourself, August continued. His voice was quiet, measured, but she could see the effort it cost him, the way his hands gripped the edge of the mattress as if he needed something solid to hold on to. For developing feelings for someone who would never look at you that way. The humiliation came fast and hot, flooding her chest, climbing up her neck, burning behind her eyes. The specific, excruciating humiliation of having your most private thoughts read by the one person you wrote them to hide from. August. Those were written months ago. I was not in a good place. That is not... Was it about me? The question cut through her deflection like a blade through paper. And there was something in his voice she did not expect, not curiosity, not discomfort, something closer to urgency, as if her answer mattered more than anything he had ever asked in a boardroom. Was it about me, Hazel? She could lie. One more lie, one last layer of protection. But she had used up every lie she had. There were none left. Yes. The word came out barely above a whisper, cracked down the middle. It was about you. Silence. The kind that has weight and texture and fills a room the way water fills a glass, rising until there is no space for anything else. Why did you never tell me? Hazel exhaled. A sound that was almost a laugh but carried no humor at all. Tell you what, August? That your assistant had been in love with you for 3 years? That I memorized the way you stir your coffee and the sound of your footsteps in the hallway? And the exact shade your eyes turn when you are tired? That I stayed late every single night not because there was work to finish, but because leaving while you were still in the building felt like pulling my own heart out through my ribs? The words came out in a rush. 3 years of pressure behind a dam that had finally, irreversibly, given way. You want to know why I resigned? That is why. Because I could not sit 3 feet from you for one more day, loving you in silence, knowing you would never see me as anything other than the woman who organized your life. So I chose the only option I had left. I walked away. She used the past tense. Loved. Chose. Walked. Because the past tense was armor. Thin armor. But armor. August was quiet for a moment. His grip on the edge of the mattress loosened. His hands moved to his knees. And then, slowly, one of those hands reached forward and found hers where it rested in her lap. His fingers laced through hers, carefully, as if he were handling something that might dissolve if he held it wrong. I owe you an honesty that is 3 years overdue, he said. His voice had lost its steadiness. It was raw now, stripped of every defense he had ever built around himself. I knew, not what you wrote, but I knew something was there. I felt it. In the way you looked at me when you thought I was not paying attention. in the way the office felt different when you were in it, in the way I could not fall asleep on Friday nights because the week felt unfinished without you." He paused. His thumb moved across her knuckles, a slow, unconscious motion. And I buried it. I told myself it was professional respect, routine, comfort. I gave it every name except the real one, because the real one terrified me. Admitting that I had feelings for the woman who worked for me meant risking the one thing in my life that actually worked, and I was too much of a coward to take that risk. His forehead came forward and rested against hers. His eyes closed. She could feel his breath on her lips, uneven, warm. And then you resigned. And it was like someone ripped the floor out from under me. I read your words that night, and I understood for the first time exactly what I had been too afraid to name. And I still did nothing. I locked the notebook in a drawer and told myself I would figure it out tomorrow. A sound escaped him, something between a breath and a broken laugh. And then there was no tomorrow. There was a horse on a dark road and a car that rolled twice and 15 days of nothing. And the only thought I had before the lights went out was your face. Not the company. Not the contracts. You. His hand rose to her cheek. His thumb traced the line where a tear had already fallen, catching it gently, holding it against her skin as if it was something worth keeping. I love you, Hazel. Not because you saved me. Not because you are here and I am grateful, though I am, in ways I do not have the vocabulary for. I love you because of that night in the office when you brought me coffee at 11 and sat with me for no reason and listened to me talk about sandcastles as if what I was saying mattered. Because you remembered Clara's birthday every year when I forgot. Because you made me feel, for the first time in my adult life, that I was not building something alone. His voice cracked on the last word. I do not deserve another chance. I know that. I wasted 3 years of chances. But if you would let me try. Hazel kissed him. Not gently. Not carefully. Not the way a person kisses when they are testing whether it is safe. She kissed him the way you kiss someone when 3 years of silence finally break open, and everything you held back comes flooding through at once. Her hands found his face. His fingers slid into her hair. And the distance between them, the distance she had measured and maintained and mourned for 1,000 days, collapsed into nothing. When they separated, his eyes were wet. So were hers. Stay with me, he whispered. His lips still close enough to hers that the words landed on her skin. Not as someone who rescued me, not as an assistant or a caretaker. Stay as the person I do not want to spend another day without. Hazel rested her forehead against his. Her eyes closed. She nodded. A small, certain motion that said more than any word could. Then she pulled back, wiped her eyes with the back of her hand, took a breath. Let me finish this bandage, she said softly, before I completely forget what I came in here to do. August almost smiled. A real one this time. 3 months after the accident, August stood on the farmhouse porch, alone, looking at the horizon where the city lights twinkled in the distance. He could stand for over an hour now without feeling dizzy. He could walk without support. He could remember things without effort. He was healed, or almost. But there was something that still hurt, and it had nothing to do with fractured ribs. It was guilt. Because while he was here, recovering, the world outside had kept spinning. The company he had built was in the hands of his uncle, Roderick. The employees who depended on him were adrift. And Hazel. Hazel had put her entire life on pause to take care of him. 3 months. How much longer could he stay here, pretending the real world didn't exist? You're thinking about going back, aren't you? Hazel's voice came from behind him. She was at the door, 2 mugs of coffee in her hands. It was almost 11 at night, but neither of them had been sleeping well lately. August didn't answer right away. He just accepted the coffee she offered. Dr. Alvarenga cleared me yesterday, he said finally. He said I can return to normal activities, in moderation. Moderation. Hazel repeated the word as if it were a joke. You don't know the meaning of that word. He almost smiled. Almost. I have to go back, Hazel. The company, the people who work for me, they can't wait forever. Silence. Hazel sipped her coffee, staring at the same horizon he was. I know, she said at last. And there was resignation in her voice, as if she had always known this day would come. 2 weeks later, August was back in his city apartment. It was strange. Everything was exactly as he had left it. The furniture, the paintings, even the half-full coffee mug he had abandoned on that rainy Friday before the accident. But nothing felt the same. Because the farm had changed him. Hazel had changed him. He could no longer work 14 hours straight without thinking there were more important things. He could no longer look at spreadsheets without remembering the smell of fresh coffee made by Grandma Madalena. He could no longer sleep alone without missing the sound of the crickets outside. But most of all, he couldn't go a day without seeing Hazel. So they created a routine. Monday to Friday, August worked. Meetings, contracts, making up for lost time. But he left at 6. Always at 6. No exceptions. Friday night, he drove the hour to the farm. He spent the weekend there, with Hazel, with her grandparents, with the life he never knew he wanted. And on Sunday night, he returned. It was perfect, almost perfect. But there was something in Hazel's eyes lately, something she wasn't saying. Friday. The 10th week since August had returned to work. He arrived at the farm earlier than usual. He had left at 4, managing to escape a meeting. He found Hazel on the porch. She was holding an envelope, thick paper, official. "What's that?" he asked, kissing her forehead in greeting. Hazel hid the envelope too quickly. "Nothing, just mail." But August knew her too well now. He knew when she was lying. "Hazel," she sighed, handed him the envelope. It was a job offer, operations manager for an agricultural technology company. A salary 3 times what she earned with August. A full benefits package. In another state. 8 hours away. The world went silent again. In that way, like when she had resigned. "Are you going to take it?" August asked. His voice was controlled, but inside he was falling apart. "No." Hazel took the envelope back. "I'm not even going to reply." "Why?" She looked at him, as if the answer were obvious. "Because my life is here." August should have felt relieved. But all he felt was guilt, because Hazel was turning down the opportunity of a lifetime. Why? For him? For her grandparents? What if he was being selfish again? What if he was trapping her here, the same way he had trapped her in the office for 3 years? That night, lying beside her, August stayed awake, staring at the ceiling, and he wondered, how long until she regretted staying? Tuesday morning. Hazel was in her grandparents' kitchen making coffee when she heard the sound of a car pulling up outside. Strange. She wasn't expecting anyone. Grandpa Henrique and Grandma Madalena had gone into town for groceries. She dried her hands on a towel and went to the door. A man got out of the car, an impeccable grey suit, grey hair slicked back, an expression like he had just stepped in something unpleasant. Roderick Martin, August's uncle. And he wasn't alone. There was another man with him, younger, in a white coat, a leather briefcase under his arm. Hazel's stomach sank. "Miss Owens." Roderick didn't smile. He didn't greet her. He just stated her name. "We need to talk." Hazel didn't invite them in. She stood on the porch, arms crossed. "About what?" "About my nephew, and about this arrangement you have." The way he said arrangement made the word sound dirty. The man in the white coat introduced himself, Dr. Reynolds, a neurologist. He had conducted August's post-operative follow-ups at the hospital. "Miss Owens," the doctor began, and there was something embarrassed in his voice, as if he didn't want to be there. I need to inform you about some after effects of Mr. Martin's accident that you may not be aware of. Hazel felt her heart speed up. What after effects? Dr. Reynolds opened his briefcase. He showed her reports, test results. Technical words Hazel didn't fully understand, but she grasped enough. Mild impairment of executive function, difficulty in assessing risks, a tendency toward impulsive decisions, heightened emotional vulnerability. What does that mean? Hazel asked, but she already knew. She knew from the way Roderick was looking at her. It means, Roderick replied, stepping closer, that my nephew is not in a full capacity to make important decisions, especially emotional ones. The words landed like bombs. Are you implying that… Hazel couldn't finish the sentence. I'm saying, Roderick drew nearer, that it's all too convenient. You were his assistant. He has an accident. You rescue him. And now, coincidentally, you're in a relationship. It's not like that, isn't it? Roderick raised an eyebrow. Because to me, it looks like you took advantage of his vulnerability, of a man who was debilitated, confused, and grateful for any kindness. I love August. The words came out firm, but Hazel felt something crack inside her. Love. Roderick laughed, a humorless sound. Or opportunism. You worked for him for 3 years with nothing happening. Suddenly he nearly dies, becomes dependent on you, and now you're together? Forgive my skepticism. Dr. Reynolds intervened, more gently. Miss Owens, we are not questioning your intentions. But Mr. Martin went through a significant trauma, both physical and psychological. It's possible that his feelings are a response to the trauma. Gratitude mistaken for love. Dependency interpreted as connection. Hazel felt the floor disappear from under her feet. Are you saying that what August feels for me isn't real? We are saying, Roderick answered, that perhaps he isn't in a condition to know if it's real or not. The truth was, he had his own plans for August. Roderick wanted August to eventually marry a woman of his choosing, so he could indirectly manipulate his nephew's decisions. And Hazel was a stone in his path. Hazel looked at the reports. She read them again and again. Hazel stepped back. I need you to leave. Think about his future, Roderick said before he left. August has a company, responsibilities, a legacy. He can't build that trapped here on a farm because of misinterpreted gratitude. They left. Hazel stood on the porch, alone. And for the first time in months, she allowed herself the question she'd been avoiding. What if they're right? What if August didn't really choose her? What if all of this, the I love you, the kiss, the weekends together, was just the consequence of a damaged brain trying to heal? That night, when August called to say goodnight as he always did, Hazel almost told him. Almost. But she didn't, because she was afraid of the answer. Hazel didn't sleep that night. She lay awake, staring at the ceiling, the conversation with Roderick playing on a loop in her head. She picked up her phone. She searched. She read everything she could find about traumatic brain injury and its emotional after effects. And the more she read, the worse it got, because it made sense. August had never shown any romantic interest in her before the accident. 3 years working together. 3 years of her being silently in love. And him? Nothing. Until the accident. Until she took care of him. Saved him. What if his uncle was right? What if what August felt was just gratitude, emotional dependency? Friday. August arrived at the farm, excited. He had bought tickets for a concert next month. 2 of them. For them. It's a symphony orchestra, he said, smiling in that way that still made her heart leap. You mentioned once that you'd never been to a concert like this. So… Hazel looked at the tickets. He was planning a future with her, and all she could think was, what if it's all a lie? August, she began. I know. Classical music can be boring for some people, but I thought, I got a job offer. He stopped. I know, the one you turned down. I'm thinking of accepting it. Silence. His smile died slowly, like a candle being extinguished. What? Hazel didn't look at him. If she looked, she would fall apart. It's a good opportunity. A very good one. And I think I should take it. But you said your life was here. I know what I said. Her voice came out colder than she intended. But I've thought it over, and I think it's time for me to move on. August reached for her hand. She pulled away. Hazel, what's going on? We were fine. We were living in a fantasy. The words escaped before she could stop them. You recovering, me taking care of you. But real life is back, August. You're back at work. And I need to do the same. Then go. His voice was just a whisper now, broken. Go work there. We'll find a way. I'll drive to you. You'll come here. No. Hazel finally looked at him, and she forced her heart to harden. It won't work. 8 hours apart. Both of us with demanding careers? That's not sustainable. So what are you saying? Hot tears streamed down her face, but she didn't look away. I'm saying that maybe we confuse things. I took care of you. You were grateful. And we turned it into something it wasn't. August recoiled as if he'd been slapped. You don't believe that? I do. No, you don't. Look me in the eyes and tell me you don't love me. Hazel could do it. She could lie. But she couldn't. So she said something else. Something worse. It doesn't matter if I love you. It matters if it's right. And this, us, it's not. Silence. August stood there, looking at her as if she were a stranger. When are you leaving? He finally asked. His voice was empty. Next Friday. So this is what you really want? Yes. She didn't even try to complete the sentence, knowing she couldn't. He nodded. Once, mechanically. Then I guess this is it. August grabbed his car keys. He left without looking back. When the sound of the engine faded into the distance, Hazel fell apart. She collapsed onto the porch floor. Sobs tore through her chest. Grandma Madalena came out of the house. She sat down beside her. She didn't ask anything. She just held her. And Hazel cried. She cried for doing what she thought was the right thing, even if the right thing was tearing her apart from the inside. Friday, 5 in the afternoon. Dr. Alvarenga rang the doorbell of August's apartment for the third time. He knew August was home. The car was in the garage, and something was wrong. Very wrong. Because August hadn't answered any of his calls for the past 3 days. And when a traumatic brain injury patient drops off the radar like that, it's not a good sign. The door finally opened. August looked terrible, unshaven, sunken, red-rimmed eyes. A crumpled t-shirt that looked like it had been worn for days. The apartment behind him was dark, curtains drawn in the middle of the afternoon. Dr. Alvarenga. August's voice was hoarse, as if he hadn't spoken in days. August. The doctor didn't hide his concern. May I come in? The apartment was a disaster. Empty whiskey bottles on the coffee table. Dirty dishes piled in the sink. That smell of a place that's been closed up for too long. Dr. Alvarenga had known August for months. He had seen him fight for his life in the ICU. He had seen him relearn how to walk. He had seen him recover at the farm with that woman, Hazel, who looked at him as if he were the most precious thing in the world. But this was different. This was a broken man. Have you been drinking? The doctor asked. Direct. No beating around the bush. A little. August collapsed onto the sofa, exhausted. Not enough. August, You had a traumatic brain injury. Alcohol doesn't mix well with... I know. August ran his hands over his face. I know, okay? But I can't... She's gone. His voice broke on the last word. Dr. Alvarenga sat in the armchair opposite him, and he waited. Because sometimes the best medicine is just to listen. Hazel. August said the name like a prayer or a curse. She took a job in another state. She broke up with me. Said we had confused things, that I was just grateful, that we turned care into love. The doctor frowned. And you believe that? I don't know what to believe. August shot up, agitated. She seemed so sure, so convinced, as if she had thought it all through and concluded that we were a mistake. Silence. Dr. Alvarenga observed his patient, the way he paced back and forth, nervous, lost, and then a piece fell into place. August, did someone talk to her? About the accident? About after effects? August stopped pacing. What do you mean? Dr. Alvarenga sighed. A long, heavy sound. I need to tell you something, and you're not going to like it. He told him. Everything. How Roderick Martin had shown up at his office 2 weeks ago. How he had insisted that Dr. Reynolds, the neurologist who signed August's final discharge papers, accompany him on a courtesy visit to the farm. How Roderick wanted them to explain to Hazel about August's emotional after effects, heightened vulnerability, difficulty in assessing risks, intense attachment to a primary caregiver. I said no, Dr. Alvarenga explained, his voice firm. I told him it would be unethical, that you are completely recovered mentally, that there is no evidence of any impairment in your ability to make emotional decisions. August felt the blood run cold in his veins. But they went to the farm anyway. They showed her reports, Dr. Alvarenga continued. Reports I never signed. Test results that don't exist. They may have planted the idea in her head that you weren't in a condition to choose to be with her, that what you felt was just a consequence of the trauma. August stood frozen, processing. And then the anger came, hot, brutal. That bastard! August. He did that? He manipulated her? Lied to her? Apparently so. August grabbed his phone. He dialed his uncle's number. Roderick answered on the third ring. August, what a surprise. You went to see Hazel. It wasn't a question. It was an accusation. You and that doctor, you lied to her about my condition. A pause on the other end. Then Roderick's calm, cold voice. I protected you from a bad decision. That woman was taking advantage of your vulnerability. Someone had to... August hung up. Before he said something he couldn't take back. He looked at Dr. Alvarenga. That's why she left. Not because she didn't love me, but because she thought I hadn't chosen her for myself. The doctor nodded. August looked at the clock on the wall. 6:15 in the evening. Friday. And then he remembered. Hazel had said she was leaving on Friday. Today. August grabbed his car keys desperately. August, I don't know if... I have to go to her. I need her to know the truth. Dr. Alvarenga saw the desperation in his patient's eyes, and he made a decision. You're going to drive in this state? I'll drive to hell if I have to. Then I'm going with you, for safety, and you can tell me her address on the way. They rushed out. August grabbed his phone. He called the farm. Grandma Madalena answered. Grandma, it's August. Is Hazel still there? A pause. She left about 20 minutes ago, dear, for the airport. Her flight is at 8:30. She'll get to the airport in about 40 minutes or so. Why? Because I'm going after her. Oh, what a joy. Good luck, boy. Thanks, Grandma. He had an hour. Maybe less. 1 hour to undo the lie that had destroyed everything. 1 hour to reach the woman he loved before she disappeared forever. The airport was crowded. It always is. A Friday night, the eve of a weekend, everyone traveling. Hazel stood in the check-in line with a small suitcase and a heart too heavy to fit in her chest. She hadn't cried on the way here. She hadn't allowed it. Because if she started, she wouldn't stop. Grandma Madalena had offered to drive her. Hazel had refused. She'd called a taxi. Goodbyes were hard enough without having to see the look in her grandmother's eyes, saying everything she wasn't saying out loud. You're making a mistake. But it wasn't a mistake. It was the right thing to do. At least, that's what Hazel kept telling herself as she moved forward in the line. It's the right thing. To set August free. To let him live without the weight of a gratitude he had mistaken for love. To let him find someone he truly chose when his brain was completely healed. It's the right thing. So why did it feel so wrong? Next, Hazel approached the counter. She handed over her ID. The agent typed, then smiled that professional, empty smile. Carry on only? Yes. Perfect. Gate 23. Have a good flight. Hazel took the boarding pass. Gate 23. She should go straight to the gate. Go through security. Sit. Wait. Board. Leave. But her feet wouldn't move. Because a part of her, a foolish, desperate, pathetic part, seemed to still be waiting. Waiting for what? For August to come running. For him to at least come say goodbye. This isn't a movie, Hazel. This is real life. And in real life, sometimes you have to let go of the person you love if it's for their own good. She took a deep breath and started walking toward security. August arrived at the airport, frantic. He parked the car in the loading zone. Forbidden, but he didn't care. Dr. Alvarenga stayed in the car, ready to move it if necessary. August ran. He hadn't run since before the accident. The doctors had told him not to engage in intense physical exertion yet. But he didn't care. He ran anyway. He burst through the automatic doors. He looked around. Hundreds of people. Suitcases. Noise. Chaos. Where was she? He pulled out his phone. He called Hazel. It went straight to voicemail. Of course, she had turned off her phone. Think, August. Think. Her flight. Where was it going again? Oregon. She had said Oregon. Portland. August ran to the flight information display. His eyes scanned the list. Portland. Gate 23. Boarding 8:00 p.m. He looked at the clock. Time was running out. Gate 23. On the other side of security. But he didn't have a ticket. He couldn't get through. Unless... August ran to the airline counter. I need a ticket. Any flight. Now. The agent blinked. Sir, the next available flight is... I don't care where it goes. I just need to get through security. Now. She looked at him. She saw the desperation, the urgency. Sir, I can't... August threw his credit card on the counter. Please, I need to find the person I love before it's too late. 5 minutes and $700 later, August had a ticket for a 9:30 flight. Destination, Miami. He wasn't going to board it, but that didn't matter. He rushed through security, took off his shoes, belt, watch. Anxiety gnawed at every second. He grabbed his things on the other side, put on his shoes while running, and he sprinted toward the gates. Gate 23. Hazel was sitting in a chair near the window, watching the plane outside being prepared. In 25 minutes, she would get on that plane. In 25 minutes, it would all be over. She closed her eyes, and in that moment she heard it, a voice, familiar, desperate. Hazel! Her eyes flew open, and there he was, August, running, sweaty, breathless, hair a mess, eyes wild. Standing in the middle of the airport concourse as if the world had stopped spinning. Hazel stood up, slowly, uncertainly. Was this real? August, what are you doing here? He walked toward her. Quick, urgent steps. He stopped just inches away. I know. The words came out ragged, torn at the edges by the run and by something deeper than physical exhaustion. He was still trying to catch his breath, one hand pressed against his ribs where the fractures had healed, but the memory of them had not. I know what my uncle did. What he told you. Hazel went still. The kind of still that is not calm, but the opposite of calm. The kind of still a person becomes when the ground beneath them shifts and they do not yet know which direction they are falling. I spoke with Dr. Alvarenga. He told me everything. About Roderick. About the reports he showed you. About the lies, Hazel. Every single one of them. The noise of the airport continued around them. Announcements, rolling suitcases, the hum of 1,000 strangers moving toward 1,000 different destinations. But between August and Hazel, the air had gone tight and thin, as if the entire terminal had contracted to the 3 feet of space separating them. "Look at me," he said. Not a demand. A plea dressed in the clothing of one. She looked. And the moment their eyes met, whatever wall she had spent 2 weeks building brick by careful brick started to crack. Because his face was open in a way she had never seen it. Not in 3 years of offices and late nights and careful distances. Every defense he had ever carried, the control, the composure, the practiced steadiness that made boardrooms go quiet when he spoke, all of it was gone. What stood in front of her was just a man, afraid, certain, and completely, terrifyingly honest. "Everything my uncle told you was a lie." His voice was low but clear, cutting through the noise the way only truth can. There are no emotional after effects. There is no impaired judgment. I am not a damaged man confusing gratitude for love. Doctor, Alvarenga never signed those reports. They do not exist. Roderick fabricated them because he wanted you gone, and he knew the only way to make you leave was to convince you that what I felt was not real. A tear slid down Hazel's cheek. She did not wipe it away. She did not move at all. August stepped closer. His hands rose to her face, slowly, giving her every chance to pull back. She did not pull back. His palms settled against her cheeks, his thumbs resting just below her eyes, and the warmth of his hands against her skin was so familiar and so unbearable that her breath caught audibly. "I love you," he said. And the words did not come out polished or rehearsed. They came out the way a confession comes out when it has been locked inside someone for too long. Rough, uneven, shaking. Not because you took care of me. Not because you sat by my bed for 15 days or changed my bandages or read me novels I pretended not to listen to. I love you because you are Hazel. The woman who brought me coffee with cinnamon because she noticed I liked it and never once mentioned that she noticed. The woman who remembered my niece's birthday every year and wrote cards so warm that Clara thinks her uncle actually has a heart. The woman who sat with me at 11 at night and listened to me talk about sandcastles and somehow made me feel like what I was saying mattered. His thumbs caught another tear as it fell. I wasted 3 years. 3 years of having you right there, 3 feet away, every single day, and I was too afraid to cross that distance. Too busy telling myself comfortable lies about professionalism and boundaries and all the reasons it was safer not to feel what I was already feeling. His voice cracked. He did not try to fix it. And then you resigned, and I found your notebook, and I read words you never meant for me to see, and they broke something open inside me that I have not been able to close since, and I still did nothing. I locked the notebook in a drawer and told myself I would figure it out. And then a horse stepped onto a dark road and I spent 15 days in a coma, and the last thought I had before the world went black was that I had run out of time to tell you. He rested his forehead against hers, his eyes closed. She could feel his breath on her lips, warm and unsteady. I am not letting you walk through that gate. Not because I want to stop you, but because you deserve to know the truth before you decide. And the truth is that my uncle lied to you. And the truth is that I loved you before the accident. And the truth is that I am standing in this airport with a ticket to Miami that I am never going to use, because the only place I want to go is wherever you are. Silence. Not the silence of an airport, which is never truly silent, but the silence between two people who have finally stopped hiding from each other. The silence that happens when every wall has fallen and there is nothing left but the raw, terrifying, beautiful space between one heart and another. "Please," August whispered, and his voice broke on the word, the way glass breaks all at once, completely, irreversibly. "Stay with me." Hazel's eyes were closed. Tears ran freely down her face, over his thumbs, between his fingers. Her hands found his wrists and held on. "August, what if he was right about one thing?" Her voice was barely audible. "What if you only think you love me because I was there when you were at your lowest? What if this is just—" "Then explain the notebook." She opened her eyes. "Explain why I could not sleep the night I read your words. Explain why my chest felt like it had caved in when you placed that resignation letter on my desk. Explain why I drove an hour in the rain to take you to the farm when I could have called you a car. Explain why I kissed your forehead on that porch and spent 20 minutes driving in the dark, trying to find the courage to turn around and come back." He pulled back just enough to look into her eyes, and what she saw there was not desperation. It was not the frantic, unstable energy of a man acting on impulse. It was the quietest, steadiest thing she had ever seen. Certainty. "The accident did not create what I feel for you, Hazel. It just took away every excuse I had for ignoring it." The loudspeaker crackled overhead. "Attention passengers on Flight 447 to Portland. We are now boarding all remaining groups. All passengers should proceed to Gate 23 at this time." Hazel looked toward the gate. The line of passengers was thinning. A flight attendant stood at the entrance, scanning boarding passes with practiced efficiency. Through the window, the plane waited on the tarmac, lit from beneath, its engines already humming. She looked at the boarding pass in her hand. She looked at August, and she saw it clearly. Not through the fog of doubt that Roderick had planted, not through the fear that had driven her to this airport. She saw him. The man who had sat across from her for 3 years and never once made her feel small. The man who talked about sandcastles at midnight because she was the only person in his life he trusted enough to be honest with. The man who had driven through a storm to take her home and kissed her forehead like a promise he did not yet know how to make, and almost died on a dark road with her name as his last thought. She saw him, and she knew. "I love you." The words came out broken and whole at the same time. "I have loved you since the first year, since before I even understood what it was. And I was leaving because I believed it was what was best for you, because someone told me that what you felt was not real, and I would rather lose you than be the reason you stayed in something that was not true." Her voice steadied. "But it is true. I can see it. I should have seen it before." She looked down at the boarding pass. She held it for a moment, feeling the weight of the decision in her hands. A job, a new city, a plan, a life she had built as an escape from the life she actually wanted. She folded the boarding pass in half and set it on the empty chair beside her. August exhaled, a long, shattered breath, the breath of a man who had been holding the world together with his bare hands and had just been told he could finally let go. He kissed her, not urgently this time, not with the frantic desperation of a man who had sprinted through an airport. He kissed her slowly, deliberately, with the tenderness of someone who understood, for the first time, exactly what he was holding. His hand cradled the back of her head. Her fingers curled into the fabric of his shirt. And the airport, with all its noise and movement and fluorescent indifference, became absolutely irrelevant. A woman walking past with a rolling suitcase glanced at them and smiled. A small boy tugged his mother's hand and pointed. Somewhere behind them, the gate agent made the final boarding call for Portland, and neither of them heard it. When they finally parted, August kept his forehead against hers. His eyes were wet, his hands still trembled. But he was smiling, a real, unguarded, completely defenseless smile. The kind she had never seen on his face in 3 years, the kind that made him look like a different person, or maybe like the person he had always been underneath everything else. "Let's go home," Hazel whispered. August reached down and picked up her suitcase with one hand. With the other, he found her fingers and laced them through his own. A simple gesture. The kind of thing people do without thinking when they belong to each other. They walked through the terminal together, past the gates, past the security checkpoint, past the ticket counter where, somewhere in the system, a seat on a 9:30 flight to Miami sat empty and would remain that way. Outside, the night air hit them like a gentle exhale, cool and clean and smelling faintly of rain. Doctor, Alvarenga was leaning against August's car in the loading zone, arms crossed, pretending to look at his phone but clearly watching the terminal doors. When he saw them walk out together, hand in hand, he straightened up. A quiet nod, the kind of nod that says everything without wasting a single word. August opened the passenger door for Hazel. She climbed in. He put her suitcase in the back. He walked around to the driver's side, and before he got in, he paused, just for a second. He looked at the airport behind them, at the planes lifting off into the dark sky, carrying people to cities where they would start new jobs and new lives and new chapters. And then he looked at Hazel through the windshield. She was watching him. That quiet, steady gaze. The one that had been 3 feet away from him for 3 years while he pretended not to see it. He got in the car. He turned the key. "Ready?" he asked. Hazel looked at him, and she smiled. Not the polite, measured smile she had worn like a uniform for 3 years. A real one. The kind that starts somewhere deep in the chest and rises slowly, warming everything it touches on the way up. "I have been ready for a long time, August." He pulled out of the loading zone and onto the highway. The road stretched ahead of them, dark and open and leading toward the countryside. Toward the farm. Toward the porch with the rocking chairs. Toward the sound of crickets and the smell of lavender and a grandmother who would have bread waiting. Toward home. And this time, neither of them was leaving.